Yeah. Well, you mentioned The Way to Rainy Mountain, and that's, of course, the book that we're going to be reading for this class. I wonder if we could talk a little bit about that book, which really doesn't look like a lot of other books.
It doesn't, but you know, well, what Mamade is very proud of his Indian background, Kiowa on his father's side, Cherokee on his mother's side. But he was also a PhD student and studied American literature at Stanford. He draws his Indian experience at Hamas, but he also has a thorough knowledge of American literature. And House Made Dawn is influenced, I think, Way to Rainy Mountain is influenced a good deal, Mamade in general, by Hemingway and Faulkner.
Right.
It sounds, those two are so different. It's hard to see how you could be influenced by both, but he was. For one thing, they're both modernists.
Right.
And Way to Rainy Mountain is a book of fragments or a collage. You know, it's sort of an assemblage of prose, poetry, his father's artwork, short narrative anecdotes, historical anecdotes. And modernism is very much a literature of fragments. But Hemingway's The Snows of Kilimanjaro, for instance, you know, and of course, Eliot's Wasteland. And Mamade was familiar with all of that. And so assembling a book as a collage was something he got really from his study of American literature as much as he did. But the theme is the rise and greatness of the Kiowa civilization, which, as he says, is the last great civilization to evolve out North America. And he uses these different genres, if you wish, to try to capture that experience. But the book is thematically united by the fact it's about the Kiowas and his relationship to them, particularly the trip the Kiowas made in the 18th century, moving out of the Mountain West and down to Oklahoma, western Oklahoma, the plains, and on the way getting the Sundance religion and the culture of the Plains Indians, and getting the horse, of course, and the buffalo hunting and the Sundance religion, and you know, building it into a great civilization. And so Mamade traces a path from Wyoming, Devil's Tower, Wyoming, down to Rainy Mountain, which is very near where he spent the early part of his youth.
Well, I think that's really well described, and I think that's going to help a lot of people know how to read the book and know how to approach it and see kind of how it is that it's developing its own arc.
Well, he has this pattern. He starts with a poem, and then there's an essay, which he talks about Kiowa civilization and his relationship to it and his grandmother. Then he has these three voices. He starts with a myth.
Right.
For instance, it's a myth about a buffalo with steel horns. And then he tells a little historical anecdote about the last buffalo hunt, Carnegie. And then he tells a story how he and his father were walking at the Wichita Wildlife Preserve, and they were chased by a buffalo. And so he has the mythic, the historical, the personal, and that goes through.
And that, yeah, that's a pretty regular kind of habit. So as
regular
we're looking,
alternation.
Right. As we see those, just almost on any given page, you can see those three voices play out. Right. Yeah, so looking for that interaction and looking for the thread that connects is one of the kind of, to my mind, one of the most rewarding parts of reading that again, to kind of follow the thread that unites them. Yeah.
And then the overall structure, he has a prologue and an epilogue, starting poem and ending poem, and he has three sections of these three voices. One is called the starting out, one is the going on, and one is the closing in. And it gives a rise and fall of the Kiowa civilization. And the important thing is two things. One, he thinks history is not what happens to you, but what you choose to happen. So he thinks the same thing of personalities. You make yourself. It's an existential choice. So he said, developed a good idea of who they were. They determined who they were. He calls them a people of buffalo hunters and thieves, and he tells about them and how they saw themselves. And the other thing about it is he doesn't have what Gerald Visner calls victimist history. He talks about the end of the Kiowa civilization and how it was painful to the Kiowas, but he's aware that he's not looking for pity. The Kiowas had a lot of battles. They won many, they lost many, they developed a great civilization. This isn't a story of pure tragedy. It's a story of triumph as well as tragedy. So it's a very upbeat book.
Right. It gets us to some poignant moments when he's talking about his grandmother's apprehension of deicide. Right. That's a really touching moment. But you're right. All right. So here's one of the things that I've wondered about in seeing these three different voices getting into dialogue. It seems to me that in the latter part of the book, we start to see those kind of coming together and the lines between them getting a little blurrier. And maybe it's that kind of moment that helps it to be not just a book of tragedy.
Yes, and you know, in the epilogue he goes on, and one of the things you take away with it is the thing that Americans really need to know. They're still here. The Kiowas haven't gone anywhere. Some people seem to think that the Indians are gone, the vanishing Americans, and that was a theme, you know, a trope, the vanishing American. Well, they haven't vanished.
Well, yeah, hell, they have a movie called The Vanishing Americans, right? Yeah.
And there's been this renaissance where this is in many ways their finest hour. You know, there's been an efflorescence of culture, and that's one of the themes of the book. We're still here.
Right, yeah.
I'm here. Watch me.
Yeah, absolutely right. Still writing, in fact.
Yes.
Yeah, the guy's got a lot of books to his name.
Yes, he's still writing. He's still writing poetry. I'm in touch with him, and I see him about once a year.
Oh, no, that's wonderful. When you were talking earlier about modernism and its influence on Momaday's writing, I was suddenly reminded, I don't think I'd ever thought of it before, that Ezra Pound looks to kind of figure in some ways to the poetic way that Momaday is going about his work. There's a lot of imagism, it seems to me.
Yes, definitely imagism. Whether he gets it from Pound or where he gets, I'll tell you, there are two real sources. One, his mentor, Ivor Winters at Stanford, was greatly influenced by. And second, the images themselves used Indian poetry, Chippewa and others. And the form they encountered it, someone put out a book called Chippewa Music, or Chippewa Songs, in about 1909 to 10. And they printed the music. And the songs, as you know, like 49 songs, had long choruses and a refrain. Well, the choruses were largely vocables. So what you got from this book of Chippewa songs were the cryptic two-line haiku-like songs like, our bird I thought it was, but it's my beloved's stroking oar. And they looked like petals on a wet black bough, you know, the Pound poem.
Right.
They weren't that way in performance. There were a lot of chanting and a refrain. But as they were issued in this book, people can't read music by and large, so they would ignore it, and they just look at this refrain. And the imagists saw this, and it was important to them. And their idea of Indian poetry was two-line, couplet-like haiku images, and usually very strong images.
Right.
I hear the sound of summer in the spring, you know, the cryptic. And that influenced the images, which influenced Winters, who was very interested in what he considered Indian poetry. And he passed it along to Mountain.
So we've got a kind of reappropriation going on.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating.
Very much.
Yeah, I imagine you probably told me that in class and I forgot it, but I remember it now. Yeah, that's wonderful. As we're thinking about the different voices going on, I wonder if you would add to that then the kind of graphic voice. And we've got a lot of really nice illustrations by Mamadé's father there.
Yeah, Al Mamadé was an artist who was a rough contemporary, a little bit later, with the Kiowa Five.
Okay.
And traditional Indian art owes itself a great deal to the Kiowa Five. So the images in the book are black ink images, and they have what to take away from the Kiowa Five is the symmetry and the spare lines, the sense of a line, the absolutely no background.
Right.
It's always a picture with no background.
Right.
And I think they fit very well with the text. Normally, pictures in a book are a distraction, and they had them when I was a kid, but N.C. Wyeth would draw a picture of Odysseus or something.
Right.
But it was always a distraction, you know. You'd have a picture in your mind of what he looked like, and then in the illustration he had blonde hair. You know, you thought of him as dark.
Right. Yeah, these seem much more evocative.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, it certainly is.
And it looks like this is a similar strategy that Mamadé has taken up lately, like in the Bear's House. It looks like he's now doing some of his own.
He is. However, his art is very different from his father's. Even when it's pen and ink, or ink, if you notice, it's kind of a postmodern grotesquerie. The picture of the bear, or his pictures are very much in tune with the modern Indian sensibility, but not the old traditional Oklahoma Kiowa Five.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a little bit of playfulness, but you're right. Grotesque does very accurately describe what we're seeing there. You suppose that owes a little bit to Shoulder's work? I know you've been writing about Fritz Shoulder.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it does, very much.
Yeah.